Welcome back. You're listening to Get Real with Bob and Stacy, and you're joining us for our Leaders and Legends segment. Our guest is entrepreneur Mark Dohnalek, President and CEO of Pivot International. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So for some background for everybody, Mark is President and CEO of Pivot International. It's a global product development and manufacturing firm based in Kansas. They have over 300 employees in the U.S., Taiwan, China, London, and Manila. Mark leads their global core business and acquisitions in the U.S. and abroad. He has over 30 years experience in manufacturing, product development, and business management. His broad spectrum of experiences in manufacturing, engineering, biometric security, industrial, consumer, and medical product solutions has enabled him to grow the company and expand in European and Asian markets. Since he acquired Pivot in 2012, he has leveraged his business experience and passion for innovation to develop, engineer, and manufacture solutions for clients in various industries. So first, Mark, I have questions just about your industry in general because I'm not that familiar with it. So do people hire you to make product for them?
Yes, they do. They often come to us with an idea or a concept, and we then take that concept of understanding and take it into a full prototype phase through product design and engineering into manufacturing. So we take it from the back of an envelope, if you will, to a packaged product in a store shelf.
That's cool. So say so any idea, somebody has an idea for a product. First of all, do they have to get the idea patented first, or do they go to you first just to see if it can be made?
Yeah, often they would come to us prior to the patent process. Mm-hmm. Not everyone files for patents anyway, but they often come to us with the concept. We have often then going through what we call a feasibility study, mm-hmm. in the sense that sometimes they don't know for sure if it's going to function, or we don't know for sure if it's doable. And so we often go through a phase within the prototype stage where it's a feasibility study, where we proof of concept, what we call proof of concept, making sure the idea proves itself out that it can be a functional product. And then at that point, once you're kind of through that early stage, then it's a good time when you start formulating kind of concepts. You can start constructing a framework for a patent pending filing, and go down that route. But it's often prior to that.
This is awesome. I am going to need your cell phone because I constantly have ideas on things I want to invent.
But they
so
don't go past the idea phase.
So now,
so
Mark,
you're an idea person. That's good.
Yes, I'm going to just text you multiple times a day with my ideas so you can tell me when I have something I can build.
Excellent.
So, what kind of stuff? Give us a couple of examples of stuff that you guys manufacture.
Yeah, we get everywhere from very technical type products like biometric imaging, iris detection type devices, surveillance type video surveillance systems, like in some of the police and fire areas that we've heard about in recent years in America, all the way on the other side of the spectrum to consumer products. We believe it or not, make an automatic fish skinner device that's sold in the outdoor retail or big box stores. So it goes in quite a wide spectrum, and then everything in between there. So we do a lot of touchscreen devices. If you ever go get a coffee and you touch a screen to have the coffee pour out, we make a lot of those electronic interface products as well.
Huh.
That's
this
cool.
is so cool.
Yeah.
So it seems like are you vetting new stuff all day long? How do you determine what is feasible to move forward with and stuff that you should just get rid of right away?
Well, we have it's a good question. We have really three different segments of types of people that approach us: the entrepreneur, the startup type person, the middle market company, and actually some big billion-dollar companies as well. You would think they would have all the skills in house that we have, but it's amazing how many clients we have that are big corporations. But within the startup segment, part of that is we assess the product, and is it realistic, and do we see a real market for it? We have to do a little bit of a business judgment on our own. Then if that passes our scrutiny, then you have to make judgments on these folks. Like the four entrepreneurs that come in with an idea. Like you say, we have several of those a week that come through. Part of my judgment is I would look at, from my point of view, do these people have the bandwidth, the skill set to go to market? Because we have to bet on them, because a lot of times A lot of times you have to decide who you're going to go with, because you have a limited amount of capacity. We all have a limit to a certain amount of how many engineers and how many projects we can take on at one time. So we have a pretty large scale company, but there's always those judgments. So we spend part of our time assessing them as well to see. Now the middle market companies and the large corporations, we don't have to worry about that. But the startups and the entrepreneurs, we go through that process.
So interesting. So talk about trends in your industry. It's interesting that you are U.S. based, but you're also in Taiwan, China, London, and Manila. I think like the perception to most people is that if you want to manufacture something, you have to get out of the United States. Is that true?
I think more importantly, I think particularly in the electronics area that we emphasize, we are also in strict mechanical devices as well, but so many products in all industries have embedded electronics to them. So for that, whether it's made in the United States or not, I think there's levers that can be pulled to make the U.S. more competitive. Mm-hmm. But the key component is having a global supply chain network like we have. You must have sourcing worldwide organization, because most of the embedded electronics originate from Asia, whether we like to admit it or not. It doesn't have to be made in Asia necessarily, but you have to be able to source globally. For every piece of electronics, your cell phone, your mobile phone, has a circuit board inside it, and most of those components originate from Asia, and always have. Matter of fact, it wasn't like a recent thing. It's the componentry sourcing has always come from there. So you've got to be able to have that to be able to hit your target price point, and then you can manufacture in certain, particularly if we get tax reform and deregulation that we're hearing about, they'll position U.S.-based manufacturing in a better place while having this global sourcing organization. That positions you, frankly, I think, to be able to be more emphasized towards the concept of making more things here. But all those things, I think, all those actions have to take place, and you must be able to source globally, though, for the components.
Wow. So when it comes to manufacturing, like who's building the stuff? Is it humans or is it robots?
Well, it depends what the type of product. If it's a highly specialized device, it's going to be more engineering technician type, engineering-based kind of workstation type manufacturing. If you're in consumer products, high volume, you're going to have a lot of robotic of that level. If it's made in Asia, it's going to have less of that, or they're going more of that. And a lot of your consumer products, like that are sold in the Walmart stores, a lot of that gets manufactured in Asia. That's going to be very tens of millions per month type linear volume. You're going to have robotic manufacturing in that situation. Highly scientific engineering-based products, less so because of the technicality of it, and also because of the less linear volume. So there's a few variables that dictate how something's being made. But certainly, as we talk about reshoring, we talk about different terms are being used about the U.S.-based re-engineering and manufacturing in this country. There's going to be a lot of robotic investment made for that to happen, and the winners are going to be the people like the General Electrics and the Honeywells of the world who make the automated equipment, and the employment benefit is going to be the technical people, technicians, engineers, science-based type educated background, rather than in the 1950s, because there's a myth out there that the 1950s, the guys are going to be standing outside the gates waiting to come in the morning for production time. It's going to be more technical people because of the robotic nature of a reshoring U.S. manufacturing improvement going forward.
So those bigger companies that are building, with GE and Honeywell, they're actually building this robotic equipment. Are they using robots to build that equipment, or is that skilled laborers doing that job?
I think it's a combination, depending on what type of piece of equipment. I think it's going to be both. You're going to have a lot of robotics in a sense that CNC, automatic CNC type equipment, making some of that large equipment. It's going to be. Yeah, I think there's a combination. Some of it will be robotics, and some of it will be just highly technical people in those technical industries. So it's going to be a combination.
So if somebody comes to, let's just say it's a startup and they have an idea for a new gadget of whatever kind, how long does it take to actually get something to market? Especially because you're talking about sometimes in some of the situations, not only do you have to build the product, you might have to build the robot to build the product. So it seems like it could take years for something to come to market.
Right. Well, I think we normally can, if an entrepreneur comes in for like a consumer-based product or a basic product, 9 to 12 months is what we normally say, because not everything goes immediately to robotics. And with our footprint,
Right.
we have a global company where we manufacture in Asia as well as the United States. We do both. We kind of decide where we're going to do something at based on lots of factors. But you don't have robotics necessarily in a lot of the embedded electronics devices. So, and typically you don't in most of these products. So yeah, we can have that product in the hands of the customer within the 12-month period normally. And really, the gating factor often is the tooling that's associated with the. If you look at your phone, you have electronics inside it with the housing on the outside. Well, that takes tooling to make the housing, and often that becomes the gating factor of not getting to market 6 to 9 months versus 9 to 12 months. The other factors, if it's an entrepreneur, what we see though, what often is a gating factor is in an entrepreneurial type situation, is do they have the capital structure to go into production as quickly as we're ready? And that's a different kind of area of discussion in terms of what are some of the challenges we see in entrepreneurs. That's one of them. Do they have the capital plan in place to know that the kind of money they're going to have to outlay to start production? And then that can cause a delay because they have to go through a fundraise or they have to figure out how to pay for it.
Right. Tell us about, I know that you were a recent sponsor and judge at the annual Kansas City Make 48 competition for people that want to innovate, inventors like me.
Like you that haven't invented yet.
I'm very excited that I have Mark's phone number. So other inventors like me. Yes. So talk about what the competition is.
Yeah, it's kind of an offbeat of Shark Tank, although in a different facet. It's a certain teams get selected for an idea. And the Make 48 stands for Make It in 48 Hours. So what's interesting about this and what other news networks have been interested in because they've been intrigued by it is that the idea is that these teams show up and they have with nothing, and they have 48 hours to make a functional prototype, and then they get judged on it. And then the winner, QVC, gets involved in it. Some other kind of pathways to market get involved with it that helps the entrepreneur go to market, whoever wins. And so it's a great venue for the entrepreneur as well, because if you win or take second or third, you now have an automatic buy-in pathway to help go to market, because they're part of the program, they're part of the sponsorship, they're part of the involvement. But what's interesting about it is that it's within a 48-hour period, these people come up from inception and develop a functional prototype within a 48-hour time frame.
Wow.
So that's what's interesting about it. Yeah,
wow.
It's a lot. They stay up all night. It's 48 hours straight.
That's awesome.
And they've got 3D printing in there. There's various companies donate equipment for the show to help give them the tools in which to make that happen. But it's still extremely impressive. When you think about a prototype, often will take 8 to 12 months, or 8 to 12 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks, and these people get it within a 48-hour time.
So these people are working on what I would call Stacy time.
Yeah.
She'll come up with the idea. 48 hours later, it's on her desk.
Yeah. 3 minutes later, I'll text Mark.
Stacy would love it, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Oh, she would.
So we only have a couple of minutes left, but you mentioned 3D printing. Is that competition for you?
No, it's not. In fact, it's an enhancer for us. Because you could maybe, because if we were just a standalone prototype company, perhaps it could be theoretically, or maybe someday. And I wouldn't say today it would be either in that situation. But for us, it helps our process. So if we think a 9 to 12 month period from start to finish, we feel, and we have 3D printing capabilities in our company right now as we speak in our research and prototype function, is that we think it takes 2 months off that cycle theoretically, because there's normally 2 to 3 rounds of prototyping to get it refined down to the level that we need it to be take it down to the next step of the process. And every iteration is a 3 to 4 week iteration. Once you get it done and you look at it, you test it, and then you go back and make adjustments to that. So within a matter of a 1 day or 2 day period, we can do it through those rounds instead of 3 to 4 weeks. So it's really an enhancer to getting a product to market.
That's kind of cool. So you're doing it for the prototype, but then, so once you have the prototype, due to the cost, are you not manufacturing it through 3D printing?
No, we're not. I think there's a lot of discussion about it's kind of like other technologies.com in the late 90s, radio in the 1920s. The concept of the technology and the immediacy of where people thought it was already going to be always accelerates ahead of where it really is at. I mean, there's exceptions to that. There are some people using 3D printing for manufacturing, but largely speaking, where it's really being a benefit at this moment in time is in the product development stage. Someday, I'm sure it will move in a heavy dosage of manufacturing, but realistically now it's more about an aid to product development and prototype turnaround, and over time, it's of course going to move in more and more into manufacturing. But no, we don't use it for manufacturing at this time. You know, what's also good about 3D printing capability when you're in our business is it allows us to put a product in the customer's hand in an early stage period of time for form factor purposes, to see for themselves, is this what you're talking about? Is this what you're kind of trying to achieve in real time? And that's what's really beneficial. Awesome stuff.
Great.
So thank you for joining us. This is Mark Dohnalek. You can follow him. You can check out his website. First of all, it is Pivot INT for Pivot International. So pivotint.com, or his website markdohnalek.com, and that's DOHNALEK. Or you can follow him on Twitter at PivotINT or Mark Dohnalek. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Mark.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
That's all for this edition of Get Real. Make sure you join us again next week.